preservation of and increased access to the 92nd Street Y Humanities Audio Archives is generously funded by the National Endowment for the Humanities.
Good evening. I'm Sally Steenland, the media director of the National Commission on Working Women, and we're going to talk about women in TV tonight. So if you're here for jazz or ballet or poetry or a million other things that the Y offers, you're in the wrong room. But if you want to talk about women in television, you're in the right room. It's a small crowd, and I think that means we can be informal. So rather than my just talking at you and you're waiting until I'm done to ask a question and you might have to write it down or forget it, as I go on, if something occurs to you, a question, a comment, you disagree, you want more information, whatever, let me know. And we'll have I'd rather do that, just have an exchange back and forth as we go along. Does that sound all right? We're going to be watching a couple of clips at 2 points during, while I'm talking with you, we'll be watching a little bit of television, some good, some bad. I'm going to talk about the image of women on television as well as the employment of women in TV, and the two are very closely linked. But before I even start talking about that, I just want to say a little bit about why this is important. I think you probably think it is important, and that's why you're here, but I just want to back up a little bit. 2 months ago, I wrote a report on the image of minority character. Hello? We can't see each other. There's no lights, and I can't see my notes. Could I have a little bit? Little more. Okay, that's okay for me. Is that all right for you? About 2 months ago, I released a report through my organization on the image of minorities on television. The report got a lot of press attention. It was in the newspaper, it was in the radio, it was in television. And a couple weeks after the report was released, I got a very irate letter from a woman in Iowa. She was very annoyed, and basically what her letter said to me was, "You wasted your money doing that report. Why do you pay any attention to television at all? Everybody knows that it's only stupid entertainment. Why don't you use your time to do something much more important?" Well, of course, I had to write back to this woman, and when I did, I had to think and then say really clearly why it is that TV is important, why I get paid to do that, to look at TV images, themes, and messages. And you probably know the statistics by heart, but let me just go over them quickly. TV sets are on for over 7 hours a day in most American homes, and the time goes up. We spend more time watching TV than we do anything else other than sleeping. That's for kids too. And there are famous examples of TV influencing real life. The show Happy Days had a character named Fonzie in it. He got a library card on one show's episode. Within a week after he got his library card, thousands of kids across the country got library cards as well. On All in the Family, Edith Bunker got a mammogram. After she got her mammogram, breast clinics and doctors' offices reported thousands of women getting mammograms across the country. A more recent example is LA Law. I have a friend who works in a law firm in Washington, D.C., and they recently started patterning their staff meetings after the staff meetings on LA Law. They said, "Oh, geez, it just looks so much fun, Danish and all of that. We really felt we were missing something." And so they started having staff meetings just like they did on LA Law, and law school applications have gone up since that show has been on the air. But beyond these specific examples of the library card and the mammogram and all of that, TV exerts a pervasive influence on all of us. It shapes our attitudes, it shapes our behavior. It is the storyteller of our time. I think we know that. And therefore, it makes enormous sense that we should pay attention to it. And we should care about the images and the messages that we see night after night. Now, how this relates to women is when women on television are less visible than men, as they are. There are fewer women on TV than men. When they're younger, as they are. When men take orders rather than give them, as they do. When they're passive, when they use their bodies seductively, as much research has documented that they do. And it's important to examine these messages and also to work for change. And that, in fact, is what my organization, the National Commission on Working Women, does. For 7 years, I've been doing media reports. Every fall, I examine the image of women on the new fall season. 2 weeks ago, I just released a report that looked at this fall season, and we can talk about that in a little bit. It was a terrible, terrible season for women. It was just one of the worst we've seen in years. And then during the year, I also do reports on issues that are important to women. We've looked at adolescent girls on TV, older women, families, children, minorities on TV, and I've also done the employment of women behind the camera. Last year, I wrote a report called Growing Up in Prime Time, and it looked at adolescent girls, how they were portrayed on primetime entertainment shows. And in fact, it was our real life work of my organization that triggered the study. We were doing sex equity projects in several high schools across the country with real life teenage girls. And what we were finding was very troubling. In the real world, we were finding that girls were much less likely than boys to take math and science, which, as you know, are increasingly important prerequisites for future jobs. Girls are still being steered into those very traditional vocational education classes which lead to low-wage jobs. Girls are still, despite 20 years of the women's movement, their mother's experience and what they know, they're much less likely than boys to recognize that they're going to be working for at least 30 years of their adult lives and to think about those careers quite seriously. And in our work with adult women in the real world, we found alarming statistics as well. Over 4.5 million women in this country have jobs, but they still live in poverty, and many of them are the heads of their families. So these are grim statistics. These are things that teenage girls need to think about in the real world. I then wondered, being the media director, well, what's it like for teenage girls on TV? Are they smart? Are they super achievers? Do they ever talk about school? Do they ever talk about what they want to do when they grow up? Do we know what their interests are? Do we know what their abilities are? Are they good role models for real life girls? Given TV's constraints, and we know it has constraints, we know it has to entertain, given all of that, how authentic, how complete are the image of adolescent girls on TV on the shows probably that you all watch, Growing Pains, Who's the Boss, The Cosby Show. I'm going to show you a clip right now of 6 excerpts from TV shows that I studied for the report. It's short, it's 5 minutes long. There are 6 clips. We'll start with Samantha on Who's the Boss. If you're over 11 years old, you might not watch all of these shows. I had to for my report. And we're going to end with a clip from Growing Pains, and then we're going to talk about it. I hope it works. Can everybody see?
Let's see here.
Hi, Dad. Anything I can help you with around the house?
What did you buy? Uh-oh. They look like they came from an Italian cow. How much?
Less than you think.
How much?
They were on sale.
How much?
$90.
How much?
Good deal. Where did you get them?
Hold up. Who cares where she got them? How did you pay for them, Sam?
I used the credit card you gave me.
Sam, that credit card was for emergencies only.
It was the last pair they had. There was tugging and pulling and biting. You did the only thing you could, dear.
Wow, a cruise sounds like so much fun. Let's pick that too, Mark.
It's not one of our choices. We only have $100.
Well, that is so unfair. How come Lily and Janice have all the fun?
We are not having fun.
Okay, now Tracy. Tracy. We can start a savings account, buy a used washing machine, or bet our money at the track.
What do you think, Mark?
Well, I think we should save our money.
No, I mean my blush. Do you like it?
I think it looks great. It's so plushy. Tracy, the project. What do you want to do?
I want to quit my job. I'm not cut out for pouring Slurpees at a convenience store.
Well, what are we gonna do for money?
We'll be rolling in it. I am going to be a spokesmodel on a game show. What do you think? Did I overboob? Oh, well, it's not the size that counts. It's just getting them to point in the same general direction. Oh, hi again. Oh, hi. It's a real nice party, huh? Yeah, it's all right.
It doesn't touch last year's, though. One of the pledges brought a real pig.
Dwayne seems real nice. How long you guys been dating?
What? You haven't figured it out yet, have you, kiddo?
Figured what out?
This is a Bowser ball. You know, a hog party. All the pledges are supposed to bring the biggest losers they can find. It's all a big joke. When I was first asked to one of these, I felt kind of hurt. But then I figured, what the hell? I'd be sitting around the dorm all night waiting for pizza to come. Besides, he's got to get enough punch in him. The girl might get lucky.
All right, 58, and that completes all the measurements I need for the bookshelf.
Do you want me to add the numbers?
No, I can do it myself. Thank you. 12 plus 1 is 13, plus 8 is 21. Put down the 1, carry 2.
Carry the two?
Yeah.
I can't believe you carried the two.
So what's wrong with that?
Dad, that's old math. There's a much better way to do this.
And what is that?
The base method. It's like new math.
Base method?
You see, every foot is 12 inches.
You're kidding.
Dad, I haven't made my point yet.
Okay, I'm sorry.
That since every foot is 12 inches, we'll use a base 12.
Mm-hmm.
That means 12 will represent 1 unit. So the numbers you add won't actually be numbers, but parts of a unit. It's much quicker.
Well, thank you very much, but I only have 5 numbers, and I'll just use the old method.
Yeah, but Dad, you really should learn the new math. When our teacher was giving us homework on it, Janet Meiser's father went to night school to learn it.
Janet Meiser's father is a wimp. And just let me tell you, anytime you want to challenge the old versus the new, just let me know, all right?
Do I hear a challenge?
You can hear whatever you want to hear, my dear.
You promise not to yell when I add my numbers faster?
I will not have to yell because I'll be finished.
Okay. Let's add the following number. 40.
No. I'll give the numbers. Okay? You ready?
Mm-hmm.
17, 29, 43, 7, 66, 82. Go. Says 5, just can't carry, presented 4 carries, and
244.
that's enough, right? Yeah, that's what I was just checking.
I bet when we were adults that no one would care about the kind of grades we got in school. They'd only care about the kind of person we are.
I said that?
So the more we learn, the more we become enriched as people.
No, I know I didn't say that.
Oh, of course, education not only shapes how other people see us, but how we see ourselves.
Yeah.
It's not about learning facts. It's not about grades. It's not about being perfect. It's about being somebody worth knowing.
Uh-huh.
I better like myself since I'm going to be with me all my life, right?
Right?
That's worth going to school for. That's better than grades. That's worth studying for till you drop. That's it. Thank you, Mike. Oh,
That's it. What'd you think? For this report, I watched over 200 episodes of shows like this containing teenage girls, 200. And what I saw over and over again were pretty much what we saw. Girls who are obsessed with clothes and boys. For the most part, girls on TV are disinterested in school. They have no abilities. They have no skills. They have no interests. They spend most of their time shopping and dating. Now, this is not to say that teenage girls in the real world don't like clothes or boys. Of course they do, and that's fine. But in the real world, girls also have minds, and they use them for on other activities as well. Perhaps one of the most offensive episodes that I studied for the report was that Mr. Belvedere episode you saw the clip of those two girls at the punch bowl. One of the themes of this particular episode and some other ones I watched as well is a dangerous one, and it's that if you're a smart girl, you're a social misfit. It's not good to be smart. I thought that was extinct, but in fact it's not. I just want to recap for you some of the lowlights of this Mr. Belvedere episode. Kevin is the oldest brother in the family. He's pledging a college fraternity. As part of the orientation, the fraternity's having a Bowser Ball, and the pledges have to find the ugliest girl they can find on campus and invite her to the ball. Kevin doesn't know where to find such a girl. He goes to his friend. His friend says, try the girls' track team. The girls on the track team have more hair on their arms than they have on their heads. Ha ha ha, gets a big laugh track. Then Kevin is in the library and he bumps into Audrey. Audrey was the girl with the dark curly hair. She's a brilliant chemistry student. She's clumsy, she's awkward, she's gawky. She wears glasses for most of the time, which is TV's clue that it's a smart girl if they put glasses on her. And she immediately develops a crush on Kevin. She starts doing all his lab homework for him. She's a victim. Inadvertently, he invites her to the ball. She doesn't know why she's coming. She thinks it's because Kevin likes her. And at the dance, there's that punch bowl scene that you see, that we saw the excerpt of. And the most astonishing exchange takes place at this punch bowl. The young woman who's been coming for several years says to Audrey at the punch bowl, you don't get it, do you? When I was first invited here, I thought it was a joke. And when I was first invited here, I found out it was a joke and my feelings were hurt. But then I figured, what the heck? It beats sitting around in the dorm ordering pizza. Besides, she says, pointing to the spiked punch, if a guy gets enough of this in him, a girl might get lucky. Now, the translation is, I'd rather date a guy who thinks I'm ugly than be with my girlfriends eating pizza, and if my guy gets drunk, he might make a pass at me. I hope he does. Audrey becomes outraged when she finds out the point of the dance, and she retreats where else but to the library, which throughout this show has been a place of shame and where you would never want to spend a Friday night studying in the library. Kevin finds her in the library. She forgives Kevin, and all is well at the end of the show. It's a terrible show. It aired in 1988. Throughout the show, girls were called hogs, pooches, bow wows, all kinds of terrible names. We objected to it in our study, and the show's producers took offense at our objection, and they said we had no sense of humor. There was a magazine interview about our study where they interviewed the producer, and I'm going to quote what one of the producers of Mr. Belvedere said. Women, I'm quoting, women are at the back of the bus, comedically speaking. There's not much going on in a young girl's life that makes for good comedy on primetime TV, end quote. Well, with attitudes like that, I mean, you can imagine why we got such bad stuff on TV. Yes? How old are these producers? They're in their 20s. What does that mean? Well, you know, I scratched my head as to why this stuff was so bad. Most of the producers do not have teenage girls themselves, and since they're men, they never were teenage girls. So my only sense of it is that they're sort of relying on memory of what it was like when they were teenagers and what teenage girls were like. I mean, I really don't know. Yeah, I think it is. And they, they couldn't understand why we didn't think the episode was funny, why it was all in good humor. They said we just didn't have a sense of humor and we didn't get the point of it. Sure I would. Jeff Stein and I can't think who the other one was. And actually something quite interesting happened because I went out to California to meet with the producers of this show, of all the teenage girl shows after I did the report. And Mr. Belvedere show was the most notorious of them, and they had gotten a lot of press, and they had even issued a press release in response to our report. And so they knew who I was, and when I called asking for an appointment, a woman got on the phone who was a woman producer for that show, and she clearly closed her door, and she said, I know who you are, and I agree with everything you say, and if you think that show was bad, you should see some of the things I've kept off the air. So she had a very difficult position. She was an associate producer. She's been in the business for many years. Her main job is damage control, and she wasn't proud of that show, but she couldn't overrule it. So, did somebody else have? Yeah. The ratings aren't bad, as a matter of fact. What's troubling about that show as well is research shows that maybe all of us, but teenagers and children especially, identify with people who are a couple years older than them. So when you're a 10-year-old, you're looking at the Vanessas, you're looking at the 13-year-olds. When you're a 13-year-old, you're looking at the 16-year-olds. And so the kids who are watching Mr. Belvedere are pre-adolescent, are 10 and 11 years old, and they're learning about what it's like to be in high school, what it's like to be smart. That other clip we saw from the Hogan family, that second clip where the one girl's putting on the blush and the other girl had her hair in a bun and she had her glasses, she was the smart girl. And the assignment of that class was they were paired, computer paired. And they were supposed to be husband and wife, and they were supposed to make out budgets and do a whole bunch of things in terms of learning real life skills. And the one boy got paired with a smart girl who looked like a stereotype of a spinster librarian. She was very sort of severe looking. Her name was Janice, and she had her hair in a bun and she had glasses, and she was very stern. And the other one, Tracy, was the popular girl, the airhead who was putting on blush, who wanted to be a game show model, who everybody wanted to be with. So that contrast comes up again and again, and those kids were in junior high. So that's what we found for teenage girls. Surprisingly, I had expected to find, what you tend to see for adult women on TV are these super women who can do everything, and I thought we would find that as well for adolescent girls, super girls who were smart, who were popular, who were going to go to good colleges, who were really ambitious, who did everything. And in fact, what we found was this sort of 1950s throwback to boys and passive behavior and clothes. And so in a way, adolescent girls on TV are portrayed less well than adult women are, which isn't so good. Yeah.
They look at this,
Yeah.
this prepares them for their role as teenagers. This is the way they're going to treat girls.
I think it's damaging on both sides. Yeah. Yeah, there are. The Cosby Show does a really pretty good job, and there's a show called Head of the Class as well that it's a sitcom about gifted and talented kids, and it's got girls who are smart. But that show was disappointing as well, and actually something pretty interesting happened after we studied that show. What was disappointing about that show is there were 5 boys and 5 girls in that class when we were studying it. The boys were very well defined. One was smart in math, one was smart in science, one was a brilliant creative writer, one was this, one was that. You knew what they were good at, and plots revolved around them. The girls were much less the center of attention, and they were just kind of generically smart. You never even knew what they were, but you didn't know, is it poetry? Is it foreign languages? I mean, what area of brilliance do these girls have? And it just hadn't been fleshed out in quite as nice a way. And the producers of that show, in fact, were wonderful, and they were quite honest about it. And they said, you're right, we got to do a better job. And so I think this past season, they have paid more attention to the girls and have written storylines and plots around them and fleshed out their characters more, given them some more texture. Yeah.
I'm wondering if the correlation is between the better shows that have a better image of the adolescent girls, and are the producers of those shows males or females, or are they...
It's not that clear. I wish it were. It really isn't. If you could draw a line, a direct correlation line, and if you'd say, you know, this is the recipe, stir in so many women and you'll get a great show, it would be wonderful, but it's not. Part of the reason for that is because the numbers for women overall are just too low. I mean, you're so far from a critical mass, you've got one or two, you don't have that many. But aside from that, there's industry constraints that are pretty strong. Yeah.
I just want to say about film, Lee Grant just has a film out about three young men. I don't know what the title is, but they were very, very delineated characters. And it was written originally for three young women, and the producer said because the characters are so delineated and so active, and it's so much their own story, to change it to three young men, rather than three young women in order to sell the film, and they did. And the film
It's Lee Grant's movie, you said?
Lee Grant was the female director.
Right.
Right, and it's changed to three young men. It's supposed to be three young men.
Wow. Ew. That's not good. She had to, yeah. Yeah, I know, God. Yeah, she's a strong one. Yeah. Okay. Okay, I want to jump now to the other end of the age spectrum, which is older women. What's their image on TV? Are the stereotypes positive or negative, and how much diversity is there? How authentic are the portrayals? In 1986, now some of these shows are off the air, but in 1986, I wrote a report on the portrayals of older women on TV, which looked at these questions. Before I even started the report, I did a lot of looking at the research. And some of you might be familiar with that. There was a lot of research done in the 60s and 70s on the image of older people, the visibility of older people on television. And what they found was that it was almost impossible to find any older people on TV. And when you did find one, 9 times out of 10, it was an older man. Just think back to the 1960s and 70s. Who was there? Well, there was Granny on the Beverly Hillbillies. There was Aunt Bee on Andy Griffith. That's about it. There really weren't a whole lot more. And the stereotype that you tended to see back then of older women on television was women who were powerless, befuddled, inflexible, feeble, sexless, eccentric, negative portrayals. It was very, very hard to find a positive one. So what did I find in 1986? And incidentally, I just want to say that for the purposes of the report, we defined midlife and older women as characters who were age 50 and above. So that's what we looked at. Any show that had a character who was supposed to be over 50 years old. Well, surprisingly, we found that the television pendulum had swung to almost the opposite extreme. Older women on TV were almost universally portrayed in a very positive light. These were some of the things we found. Older women on TV have almost no money trouble at all. On shows airing in 1986, 1 in 4, in fact, were millionaires. Many of them were heads of huge corporations, like think of Angela Channing on Falcon Crest, Alexis on Dynasty, or even Miss Ellie, who got her money through marriage. These are rich ladies. There were almost no women who had to struggle to make ends meet like the real world. On TV, we found that older women are very powerful. Over 80% have professional jobs or run their own businesses. They're effective bosses. They don't face age discrimination. They don't face societal barriers. In fact, as they get older, their power increases. Probably most important that we found older women on TV are sexy, and that is new. It is a real switch from the past. Older women are portrayed as healthy, attractive, affluent, and available for romance. And sex is no longer taboo, which it used to be for a long time. Of course, you're thinking of the Golden Girls, which everybody does, but there are other shows as well. On Murder, She Wrote, Jessica Fletcher is a character who is very attractive and has romance in her life. And the grandparents on The Cosby Show are sexually active people as well. So what you really find for older women on television is that age is irrelevant. Their salaries don't decline, their status doesn't decline, and for a lot of them, they look pretty good too. They look very good. I want to show you some clips, and before I show them to you, I want to tell you what you'll be watching. There are 5 clips in all. The first one is a very short clip from Hill Street Blues that features an older woman who was just in one episode. She's not a regular character by any means. Then there'll be a clip from Dynasty with Alexis, which is now off the air. Then there's a clip from Cheers, and This is a clip in which the characters are pretending to be old. It was one of the last episodes that Diane, remember Diane the waitress, was on? She and Sam fantasize that they've been married for 50 years or whatever. And so what you'll see in this clip that's important to pay attention to is people who are not old pretending to be old. So it's like if you're drunk and if you're not drunk and you pretend to be drunk, you do stereotypes of what a drunk person is. So these are going to be people doing what they think older people do. Then there'll be a clip from The Cosby Show, and then finally The Golden Girls. When you watch these clips, pay attention to your reaction, because people have very different reactions. The powerful older woman, the Alexis Colby fantasy, is that an inspiring image for you, or is that depressing and offensive? What do you think about the Cheers piece and the Golden Girls clip, which is a very show that people either really, really like or really don't like? Do you think this is somewhat of a breakthrough show, or do you find this embarrassing? And that'll be the last one, is Golden Girls. Is the volume okay?
Good afternoon.
Afternoon, ma'am. There was an incident in the vacant lot outside your building last night.
I saw.
You saw something, ma'am?
It's been on the television all day.
No, ma'am, what I was asking you is that if you actually saw anything out your window last night.
I'm not hard of hearing, sir.
So you didn't see anything last night, ma'am?
Oh, I stay away from the window ever since Mr. Sussman passed away. It's been 9 years.
Oh, thank you, ma'am.
Oh, let me fix you some tea.
Ma'am.
Thank you very much, ma'am.
The tea will be no trouble.
That's okay, ma'am. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, officer. Thank you, sir.
That's right. I put up $1 billion.
I should have known that money came from you. Handed out by the devil.
What do you want, Blake? It's been a very long day.
I'm here to tell you what should be obvious. I have the slightest intention of paying you that fee for money I never received.
Oh, really? Well, I put up the money in good faith, and I intend to collect every penny down to the last thin but beautiful dime. Unless...
Unless what?
I'll call off the $250 million debt in exchange for the same amount of Denver Carrington stock at market price.
Which would give you controlling interest in Denver Carrington.
Exactly.
Before I'd hand over those shares to you, I'd sell them on the open market.
Do that and watch them plummet. You won't raise enough to settle your debt, and your empire will crumble. On the other hand, if you sell to me privately, your debt will be settled once and for all.
I swear I'll see you in hell before I let you take anything from me.
Oh, I don't just want anything, babe. I want everything. This time I'm gonna get it. Sooner than you think.
Alexis,
What do you want, Dex?
I need to talk to you. Alone.
Excuse me for a minute, Alexis.
What's that for?
To cover the damages at the apartment.
You don't know me very well, do you, Dex?
Seems I don't know you at all. Not anymore.
That's because I'm finally extremely happy.
Are you, Alexis?
Yes. I finally have everything I've always wanted. Money, position, power. More power than practically any woman in America. I've done it all myself.
For what, Alexis? I mean, what are you doing it for?
Because it pleases me. Is that all right with you?
No, it's not all right. You're hanging around with a creep like Ben Carrington.
When I could have you.
It's over between us. But I can't help thinking what it could have been if we stayed together. Together we were the best. And we'd have had it all. And we wouldn't have had to steal or cheat to get it. I'll miss you, Alexis. Not the woman you are now, but the woman you were with me.
Tea time, dear.
I've had a great life. Grandson's 25-game winner with the Red Sox. Got the prettiest wife in town. And I can still fire off the old booster rockets now and again.
And don't forget your pinocchio's coming along quite well.
Yes, yes. You know, now I got the hang of it, I kind of like that game. Who called there a minute ago?
That was your granddaughter, Samantha.
Oh.
She said to tell her Gramps that she has a new boyfriend.
Uh-oh. What's he like?
Well, he sounds like a fine young man. She said he has his doctorate in laser beam demolecularization.
The only one thing kept me from going into that myself. I don't have the brains of a turnip. I'll get it. Maybe you better do it. I'd rather watch you walk anyway. Well, you know, it's absolutely amazing how you held on to your figure.
Well, it's amazing how you've held on to it, too. Oh, Clifford.
Yeah, hit your jackpot there, Joanne.
Oh, thanks so much. Would you like to come in and have a cup of tea?
Oh, don't mind if I do.
Good.
When are you going to retire, Clip?
Retire? Hell's bells, Sammy. Being a mailman's still the surest way I know of meeting the women.
I'll get it. No, maybe not.
Let me. We seem to be very popular today. Oh.
Evening, everybody.
Norman.
What's up, Norm?
Me, about 30 times a night.
Norman, shall I get you a cup so you can join us in some tea?
No, thanks, Diane. I'm just here to pick up Cliffy. We're going over to Woody's bar and have a few beers.
Well, tell Woody we say hi.
Yeah.
How's he doing with the bar?
Well, Sammy, he's turned it into a real family enterprise. You know, he and his kid are working behind the bar. He's got his wife and his daughter actually waiting tables. End of the evening, they apparently take off all their shoes and socks and add up the receipts. I mean, yeah, we're out of here.
No.
Libby, we're in. We're out of here. Hey, nice seeing you two again. Yeah, Joanne, you get better looking every year.
Why, thank you, Clifford.
Yeah, wish I could say the same thing about Vera.
Norman, didn't you tell us that Vera still has the figure of a young girl?
Sorry, it's tattooed on her back. Good one.
No, Sam. We are blessed. Wonderful friends and a wonderful family.
Certainly it's been a good life. Do you have any regrets?
No.
Now, what about that book you were going to write a long time ago now? Don't you ever wish that you had done that instead of marrying me?
That was years and years ago, Sam.
I know that, but don't you have any regrets?
Sam Malone, I wouldn't trade 1 minute of my life with you for a Nobel Prize in Literature. I'll get it.
Oh. Hello? I don't know why, Carla, because I love her. Now, can we just leave this alone, please?
Oh, I must have dozed off.
Yes, you did.
What time is it?
It's 1 minute past midnight. Tomorrow is today.
And today is our anniversary.
That's right. Happy
50th anniversary. This is Jasmine.
with a little nutmeg.
Oh, Russell, you devil.
Well, just because I brought you tea.
You brought me jasmine tea with nutmeg on our wedding night, and you know it. I remember that you brought it up to the room, and you served it on a silver tray with one red rose.
I was pretty romantic that night.
Ooh, yes, you were. Maybe this time I get to finish the tea.
Maybe not.
Who is it?
It's your mother.
No, there's some old people out there married 50 years.
Happy anniversary. Happy anniversary to you. Where are our beautiful grandchildren?
They're in the kitchen cooking dinner.
Oh, I want to see them.
Yes. Listen, last night, after midnight, we were going to call you, and then we figured you guys would probably sleeping.
And we didn't want to wake you. Oh, we were awake.
Yeah, way past midnight.
Oh, got caught up on one of those old late-night movies, didn't you?
Nope.
You're playing cards.
No.
Oh, were you reading?
No.
Well, what were you doing?
Well, now, Anna, I want to know the truth. Can I expect the same from that one? Till the grave.
But why is your life over?
Because it is. Because it means I'm old. It means I'm not a real woman anymore.
All it really means is that you're no longer able to bear children.
Oh, it means much more than that. I just don't know how it happened, you know. Only yesterday I was Magnolia Queen. I remember my Aunt Lynette going crazy about that time, and my mother saying to me in a hushed voice, "Oh, she's going through a change." I thought, poor old Aunt Lynette having to go through this change thing. I had no idea what it was, but I knew one thing for certain: it was never going to happen to me. Now here I am. I'm Aunt Lynette.
No, you're not. You're Blanche. And all that's happening is a biological process which means one thing and one thing only. You can no longer have children.
Oh, it means more than that. Much more. God, I can't even believe I'm really here. You know, I mean, at this point in my life, I can't believe we're having this conversation about me.
It's hard for you to accept.
You know, nobody in my family's ever seen a psychiatrist. Except, of course, when they were institutionalized. It's just so awful. But you're a man, you wouldn't understand.
Why wouldn't I understand?
Well, you don't get old and lose your appeal the way women do. Look at Mr. Cary Grant. Now, he can have any woman he wants, and he's in his 80s. You just show me a woman in her 50s who can do that, and don't tell me Joan Collins. That woman belongs in the wax museum.
All right, it is not just menopause, it's what represents to you growing older.
Yes.
And growing older represents a loss of attractiveness.
Yes.
Is that all there is to you? Sex appeal?
Yes.
Men only value that in you?
Well, they used to.
Now my only hope is to become an intellectual and find a retired Jew.
Blanche, you have to change your thinking. You have to find all the other things you are, all the other ways you please people. There's a lot more to you than you know.
You know, sometimes I look in the mirror and I see my mother's face looking back at me. Not all the time, just every now and then when the light's too bright or it's too early in the morning or late at night or I look real fast. There it is. My mother's face. Scares me to death. It just scares me to death. I just get so depressed I don't want to get out of bed in the morning. I don't want to get out of bed ever again.
What'd you think? I've done a lot of workshops with older women's groups where I've shown these clips, and I can tell you I've just found about every possible reaction to them. Some folks think that Alexis Colby is a great example and say it's about time. Who cares if we're evil? Who cares if we're villains? It's about time we're powerful. Others people get very depressed and say I can never look like those people. This is an impossible double standard. And how long can you hold off the aging process anyway? At some point you have to start looking older. I guess my sense is if I had to choose between the old days where there were negative stereotypes and more recently when there are positive stereotypes, I'd rather choose the positive one. But having said that, I don't think that TV does us any favors when it makes people just stereotypes and ignores the challenges and the problems and the issues that face real life women. I think it's missing lots of opportunities for character development and positive plots. Sometimes when I talk about the image of women on TV, people get impatient and they say, well, what do you want anyway? Do you want TV to look just like real life? You want, all these poor old people on television? What do you want? And my response is that of course not. We all want to be entertained. We all want diversion. We all want, to a certain extent, an escape from the real life we live. But having said that, I think that much of TV's programming is bland. It's unbelievable. It's dull. And I think one of the reasons for this lack of authenticity, in addition to the fact that TV has to be entertaining and has to get ratings, which we all know, is that there aren't enough women behind the camera. Women working as writers, producers, and directors. As I said earlier in response to a question, women are far from a critical mass at any of the studios or the networks. And as a result of that, female characters are still being created and our stories are being told by other people. In 1987, I did a report that looked at the employment of women working as producers, writers, and directors behind the scenes on primetime shows. And this is what I found. Women did best as writers, where they constituted 21%, which is not very much. The numbers went downhill from there. Only 18% were producers and less than 12% were directors. Director is the most non-traditional job for a woman to have. It involves sort of, people call it being the captain of the ship or the maestro in the orchestra. You're a public authority figure. You're giving orders to people who carry equipment and large technical things, and it is just not, people are not used to having a woman do that. And when you do find women, the numbers are small, either one or two women, token status or all by yourself across shows. And so it's really no wonder that it's hard for the influence to be felt. It's true that there has been progress. It's true that there are more women working behind the scenes than there were 20 years ago. But make no mistake about it, it is still very, very difficult to break into. Yeah. Yeah.
In order to receive money, essentially, for purchasing items. Isn't it true, correct me if I'm wrong, that women are the majority of the purchases, and wouldn't that mean that they want to please women more?
Women are most of the purchasers, as are the majority of the viewers, we're the people the Nielsen's want to get between 18 and 39. Now it's getting a little older in terms of our desirability. And so that's why you see more women in front of the camera. There are more women on TV than there are before. But in terms of who's creating those images, who's writing and telling those stories, it's not that dissimilar from news, where if you on the local anchor, wherever you see, if it's 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock news, you'll probably have a team of a woman and a man. Carol Simmons, whoever your person is here, Sue Simmons, and somebody else. So the visibility is there, and that makes you think, my God, really, there's been some progress. Look, they're all over the place. But in terms of the news director, who's deciding what news is and what stories we're going to cover and how we're going to cover it, be it abortion rights or child care or whatever, until you get more women behind the scenes. And for a long time, child care was not considered news. Wife battering, domestic violence was not considered news. When the burning bed case happened in Michigan, Sylvia Chase, who was a reporter at ABC, fought to do that story. They said, that's not news. It was the woman who, set her husband on fire and murdered him. People said, that's not news. She fought to do that story. So ABC, Brune Arledge, all right, you can go. So Sylvia Chase went. She covered it. It was on network news. The other networks and newspapers looked around and said, my God, this must be news. ABC's covering it. So everybody else went to cover it. And domestic violence is now thought of as news, but for a long time it wasn't. Or people would say, well, we did that. And you still get that. People saying, well, we did that child care story. We did that domestic violence story, which they don't say about, other kinds of things. When I did my report, I interviewed a lot of women in the industry. And I want to tell you what they say. This is the sort of composite of what you have to do to break in the industry and make it. And I'm going to quote from what some people have said. When a woman breaks into the TV industry, she must be incredibly skillful. She must be familiar with the rules, play by the rules, but still be herself. You're going to hear a lot of contradictions here. It's really tough to do. She can't be artificial by acting like a man, but you can't be weak and emotional by acting like a woman. You must work under intense pressure to produce a successful show in an industry that has an extremely high failure rate. I mean, lots of things fail, but you're more likely to be blamed for failure than your male counterparts, especially if you've hired other women to work on the project. You have to be willing to keep on proving yourself over and over again while you see less talented, more mediocre men get steady work and get promoted. But you cannot become angry and you cannot become bitter. Why? Because then you would be too unpleasant to work with and you'd be a bitch. And so you can't do that. You have to be self-confident and very authoritative when you're writing, when you're producing or directing. You have to know what you're doing and be the boss. But you can't lose your temper when your boss looks too frequently over your shoulder, as he's wont to do. You have to skillfully evade sexual harassment, which is a big problem. You can never report unwelcome advances because if you do, you'll be a troublemaker and nobody will want to work with you. You have to prove yourself to your male superiors, as this producer on Mr. Belvedere was trying to do, by acting comfortable with their rules. At the same time, you have to withstand criticism from your female coworkers who say you're not willing to go to bat for them and that you've sold out. It's very, very difficult. And as one person said to me, any woman who's advancing within the ranks, who's getting promoted in the television industry, is performing a feat as demanding as climbing a snow-covered cliff. It's just really, really hard to do. Now, as I said, there are dozens of talented women who are very successful. You can probably name them. There's the Dawn Steeles, there's the Barbara Cordays, who have big titles and have power. And to many, these women are proof that the system is gender blind in recognizing talent. And that's what I hear over and over again when I go out there and complain. They'll say, oh, no, it's just talent. We recognize anybody who has talent. But I think most industry insiders agree that the system is not gender blind and that these women who are very, very successful, they're the exception. And they leave behind them scores of women who are unable to jump over those barriers. And right now, I think what's appealing and what gives me optimism is right now there are more women than ever before in the pipeline who are ready to advance. And they're just moving in, very talented, very able. There are more programming opportunities than there have ever been in the past with cable television and many other opportunities. And so, the hope is that in the 90s, things will be different. The 80s were a terrible decade for women in terms of affirmative action. The 70s were a great decade. There was affirmative action pressure in all of the industry, including Hollywood, in all of America, and women were hired. The Jane Pauleys and the Leslie Stalls and the Judy Woodruffs that you see, many of them admit we got our jobs after 1974 when the Federal Communications Commission said to the industry, you have got to do a better job of hiring women and minorities. And in the 1980s, those pressures relaxed and it went back into being an all-boy club. So I hope that in the 1990s, things will get better. Well, what do you do about it? Well, I don't want to leave you with this sort of ain't it awful, ain't it grim picture. I think there's a lot that we can do as viewers, and if people are in the audience who work in the industry as well, especially in terms of the image of women on television. And what we need to do, it sounds simple and it might sound cliche, but it's the truth. Pay attention to shows you watch and write letters. You might think it's silly to write letters and it doesn't matter because you'll get a form letter back or you won't get anything back. But in fact, they read your letters and your letters count. Your letters get cataloged, they get numbered, they get filed, they get Xeroxed, and they get sent around. And the producers assume that for every person like you who wrote a letter, there's hundreds of other people who feel the same way, who just didn't bother to write. An example of letters changing things is the first year of LA Law. You might remember the character of Roxanne, the secretary, was a terrible character. She had no spine. She was lovesick. She was in love with Arnie Becker, her boss. She was a wimp. She was terrible. Well, secretaries by the hundreds and thousands wrote in. They were so insulted. Legal secretaries, how do this and this and this? How can you say that? Da, da, da. A lot of women's groups. We wrote in. We talked to the producers. The producers said, you know, you're right. We hadn't really paid too much attention to the secretary because we were really, concentrating most of our creativity and our imagination on the lawyers. And we kind of fell into these subconscious stereotypes. We're going to do a better job. And so in the first season, Roxanne got some spine. She asked for a pay raise, and she became a much more self-reliant character and competent worker simply because of letters. And it's true for other shows as well. And I've heard a lot of producers say to me, if we don't hear from you, we assume you'll like what you see. If they don't hear a complaint, they assume it's fine. So you need to watch carefully. You need to write letters of things you like and things you don't like. And also, join a group. Do things by yourself, but do things in a group as well. PTA, synagogues, churches, organize a group if there's not one that you know of that has a media chapter involved in it. And if you work in the industry, hire talented women. Look for them and hire them. It's just really, really important to do that. So before you leave, I want you to promise that you'll do one thing to make the picture better. I made my promise last week, and I'm already doing one thing. I'm complaining a lot about one new show that premiered this fall. It's called Doogie Howser, MD. I don't know if many of you know it. It's a show from Stephen Bochco, who's done good things. He's done Hill Street Blues and LA Law. This show is so terrible. I don't know where to start, but let me just give you a couple examples of how I'm complaining, why I'm complaining about this show. I monitored many of the episodes for my critique of the new fall season. Doogie Howser is a brilliant 16-year-old boy who happens to be a doctor, a physician. And as one of you were saying, I think one of the premises of this show was a bunch of guys sitting around saying, well, when we were 16, what did we do? Well, we looked at Playboy and we looked at girls' bodies walking down the hall, but of course we were 16 and so we couldn't see naked women, we were just kids. And they probably thought, well, if you were a doctor, you could really touch. And so the premise of Doogie Howser, what you see week after week, is Doogie Howser and naked women. On one episode, he looks young. Have you seen it? Have many of you seen it? He looks like a little kid. On one episode, there's a woman who's a beautiful radiologist. She's brilliant and she's sort of an ice queen. She has her hair in a bun, and all the men who are grown-ups, doctors and orderlies, want to date her. She won't date any of them. But what does she do? She invites Doogie out on a date for dinner. Her hair is down, it's seductive, it's around her shoulders, and she says to this 16-year-old who cannot order an alcoholic beverage, he's too young, she says, I'm approaching 40, Doogie, and my biological clock is ticking, and I was wondering if you would consider fathering my child, she says on one episode. So that's an incredible fantasy. On another episode, fantasy, Doogie is dating his 16-year-old girlfriend, Wanda. They go to the movie Batman. It's Saturday night when Wanda, guess what? She gets acute appendicitis while she's on a date with Doogie. He rushes her to the hospital. Guess what? There's no doctors around. He has to perform a pelvic examination on his girlfriend. She has to spread her legs, take off her clothes, and he gets to examine her, and she's pleading. She's so embarrassed. Doogie, please no, please no. He's a doctor. He's got to do what he does. He also operates on her and removes her appendix from her. And one more episode I will tell you about. Doogie's best friend is obsessed with sex, and he keeps telling Doogie, we're at our prime in terms of our hormones. We'll never be functioning this highly again. You're so lucky you get to see naked women. And he gets Doogie's ID and puts his picture on it so that he pretends to be a doctor. And he goes into the hospital pretending to be a physician, puts on a stethoscope, goes into a woman's room and pretends to listen to her heart just so that he can touch her breast, which is what he wants to do. And he's 16 years old and he gets to touch a woman's breast. So that's the show that I'm complaining about. You pick yours. You find ones you like, you find ones you don't like, you write letters, you complain, you agitate, you organize, and let's make it better. So I'll take questions. You've been so good asking them all along. Yeah, Marianne. Well, I have an official response and a personal response. I don't watch that. I haven't watched that show very much. I know that it's a show that supposedly is in absolutely terrible taste. And Terry Ricalta, who's a homemaker from Michigan, wrote a letter to, this is so bizarre. She wrote a letter to a bunch of sponsors, including Coca-Cola, saying, this is a terrible show. My children were watching it. I was so offended. You can't advertise anymore. The head of Coca-Cola was outraged. He said, you're right, we're pulling our advertising. However, Coca-Cola is owned by Columbia, and Columbia produces Married with Children. So, you know. As far as I know, the viewership of the show is quite high. It's not going anywhere in terms of going off the air or even being less tame, as far as I know, but it's not a show I watch. Maybe somebody in the audience has a better sense of the plots of that show. Yeah.
Is there any congruence with children's literature and TV? Do you get the same amount of the type of writing about girls, about teenagers that you
Ask your question again. I'm not sure I understand.
Children's literature.
Print literature. Are there better role models for girls in books, you mean? Oh, that's interesting. I would think that books would be a bit better just because there would be more to choose from. I mean, I'm sure there are terrible books out there, but I imagine there are good books with strong heroines. And I hear this book, The Little Mermaid, or this movie is supposed to be a positive role model. Yeah, they don't read. Oh, you know, it's interesting how young they are. I was talking to some people involved with China Beach. Do you folks know the show China Beach? A woman who's a head of the Vietnam Women's Memorial, who was a Vietnam nurse, went to Vietnam 20 years ago. And as some of you may remember, when China Beach first went on the air, it was not a terrific show in terms of women. Casey, the prostitute, had a prominent role, and it wasn't good. The Vietnam nurses were furious about this, and they wrote letters and they complained, and they said, what they said was, take the show off the air. You're doing so, we don't care if it's Hollywood, we don't care if it's television. You have no right to take what we did in service to our country and exploit it in such a way. Get it off the air. Well, a bunch of the producers invited this woman, Diane Evans, and some others to Hollywood to come talk. She went. She sat around a table with the producers and the writers. They were all in their 20s. They were all too young to know that nobody had lived through the Vietnam War. I think there was one producer who was a vet, but nobody was writing from experience or from memory or from having been there, whatever side they were on. It was like they were writing about World War II. They just didn't have any personal sensibility about it at all because they were, 3 or not even born yet. And so it's a very, very young industry. They're starting to have children. A lot of them don't have kids. And so they get their ideas from, God knows where. Yes? Yeah. Yes.
The question about the literature raises another question in my mind. It seems to me that the movies have portrayed women much better. In fact, lots of movies these days have strong women as sort of men. I particularly like broadcast news where they don't lie was a man.
And needed shoulder pads. The other guy needed shoulder pads. Well, the TV audience is a bigger audience, and that's an interesting question. I'm just thinking about this now. I'm not sure I even agree with it, but I wonder if it's that television we're kind of getting two-tier television, and we're getting quality television, and then we're getting schlock. And the quality television, you could probably name what the producers would call quality. These are shows that when they testify in front of Congress, they would not be ashamed to say they produced. And these are shows that win Emmys, and they might not be to your taste, but they're shows like 30-something and LA Law and Murphy Brown, and shows that are reasonably well written and that the network is proud of. And then there's the meat and the potatoes. There's the stuff that's on simply every single night. And I think for a long time the audience or the producers thought people were stupid and watched kind of television half attentively, and you had to really drill points home to them. But what's happening now is people are leaving network television in droves. Now that there's a choice, they thought we watched them because we loved them, and the only reason we watched them was we were going to watch TV and there was really nothing else we could do. But now that we have video cassettes and cable and pay movies in HBO, now that we have a choice, the truth is coming out. And the truth is we never loved that stuff. And so the ratings are really scarily for the networks going down. It's a question as to whether 10 years from now there will even be 3 networks. And I think they're floundering. I think they don't know what to do. They want to compete with cable, but when they get racy, they run into the married with children problem of people being offended because they don't want that stuff coming into their home. When they're bland, people turn it off. And so I think the viewer that goes to movies and reads books is the viewer that's turning off network television and going elsewhere. And people who can't afford cable or don't get it or whatever are left with the dregs. I guess it could be, yeah.
But I think there's also a two-tiered system in the movies, because you have low-budget pictures and ones that are maybe more like maybe broadcast news, which is maybe more Oscar contenders.
Right. The Oscar, yeah, the Academies, Oscars, yeah. The other thing is that America's getting older, and when you look at this big bulge in the population as this baby boom gets old, that's where the viewers are, and it's no accident that that characters on television are getting a bit older, and that not all movies aren't aimed at 12-year-olds anymore. People are discovering that there's an adult market out there that pays money, and that'll go to movies and that'll watch adult television. So, yeah.
Yeah, but there's always been a split somehow between the performing arts and, say, literature. In the 19th century, for example, women were writing wonderful books, but still in the theaters there were no women writers, no women directors.
Oh.
Terry had to perform the roles that Henry Irving wanted to perform. She was going to do Rosalind in As You Like It, or Violet to make the boy roles, and he wouldn't let her. She had to do Ophelia, and she was immortalized as Ophelia floating down the stream and so on. So I think that's carried on into the 20th century. It has to do with the means of production, and the fact that the men have always been at the helm of these performing arts, and therefore letting any woman's vision or image through has always been very difficult. Whereas in film, you start adapting books, and books are written by women. At least there's a way then for the women's mentality, which has always been evident in writing, in novels.
Yeah.
At least to begin to break through.
Yeah, and to a certain extent, the women who've been most successful and made it have been the women who've been most comfortable in the male, who can play those roles the best and haven't shaken the system and haven't felt jarred by the system. They're women who feel comfortable in that. And of course, the question that everybody asks, and they ask it in politics and they ask it in television as well, is, will women make a difference? If you did have a critical mass of women, would it be different? Would that vision be different than it is? And would the process be different? Would it be more humane? I don't know. People ask, that where I live in Washington, D.C., ask it sort of an assumption about Congress. If there were more women in Congress, would we be more peace-loving? I mean, I don't know. That's an incredibly difficult question to answer. But women, law firms, would there be more mediation and less adversarial stuff? I don't know. And in terms of Hollywood as well, it's really an unanswered question. Any more? Thank you.
Thanks for listening. For more information on the 92nd Street Y, New York, and all of our programs, please visit us at 92ny.org.